Morning, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to provide an update related to the EMBARK public transportation system here in Oklahoma City. This morning, I think what we'll do is we'll spend a little bit of time looking at some ridership data and some frequency data. We'll talk a little bit about some of our community outreach efforts, and then we'll look forward to some of the projects that we recently completed and some projects that we have in progress, all with the intent of supporting the council priority to develop a public transportation system that works for all citizens. So the first slide that we're going to take a look at this morning is our fixed route ridership for our weekday service. And the reason we wanted to look at our weekday service ridership is, of course, this is where the clear majority of our passenger trips are provided. It's our Monday through Friday service. In addition to that, it is, of course, where we've made the most system changes and improvements over the last several years, and where we've invested the majority of the additional resources that have been authorized by council over a very similar time period. So with that, I wanted to just share with you some of these numbers. You can see we have 3 years worth of average daily ridership by month, with FY14 being the blue line on your graph, FY15 the red line, and then 6 months of the current fiscal year represented by the green line on your graph. And as you'll recall, the system enhancements that we implemented really went into effect at the very tail end of FY14. In fact, it was the last week of April. So for comparison purposes, I would use FY14 as our baseline, what our average daily ridership was per month prior to our system enhancements. And then you can see by looking at FY15 and FY16, we've actually seen 18 consecutive months of year-over-year ridership growth. In fact, in FY15, our cumulative passenger trips increased by 9.5%, and our average daily ridership was right around 11,108 passenger trips. And then we followed that up with, through the first 6 months of this current fiscal year, an additional 5.5% in cumulative ridership growth, and our average passenger trips are now 11,628. So I share that information with you just to give you a sense of how some of these changes have impacted our ridership, particularly now that we have kind of our first fiscal year of those system enhancements behind us. The next slide is a look at our ridership in terms of riders per service hour. And I wanted to include this slide this morning because this is one of the council priority indicators, our riders per service hour. And again, it's really the best way to look at our ridership from an efficiency standpoint, and when we're comparing ridership year over year, particularly when there's changes in the service hours. So I have two different sets of data on this graph. You can see the blue line represents our riders per service hour over the last 5 years. And then the red bar chart is the number of service hours that we have for our weekday service. And I really wanted to focus my comments on the FY14 and FY15 time periods. And you can see that with the system enhancements, the additional funding, the emphasis on improving frequency in the bus system, we actually increased our total system hours in FY15 to 159,128. That's about a 10.7% increase from the level of service prior to our system enhancements. And then as you'll notice, even though we increased our revenue hours substantially, our riders per service hour remained relatively stable. It was actually down about 1.1% at 17.8 riders per service hour. So I share that comparison with you to point out that we increased the service hours substantially and yet maintained, for the most part, our riders per service hour. And I think that really speaks to how quickly our customer base embraced and adapted to the changes in the system, and I think it's indicative that the investment by the council certainly improved the public transportation system, and customers and citizens have both recognized that. The next slide here is one that I don't believe I've had an opportunity to share with council before, but it takes a look at our frequency. And again, frequency was one of the main things that we tried to improve when we implemented our system changes. And I wanted to give you a sense of kind of where we've come in terms of frequency over the last several years. So at the bottom of this graph here, you'll see some frequency from FY13. And as you'll recall, I mentioned we implemented our changes in FY14, so the numbers you see for FY14 include those changes. So prior to the system enhancements, we were averaging between 43 to 53-minute frequency on our bus routes. Again, that kind of depended on whether it was during peak times or whether it was at midday. With our transition to implementing the transit system analysis in FY14, we were able to improve that frequency to just over 37 minutes. And then with additional funding provided in FY15, we were able to decrease, or I should say improve frequency to under 37 minutes system-wide, and that's where we currently stand today. In fact, we have 4 local bus routes in Oklahoma City that are not on 30-minute frequencies. All the rest of our routes are. In addition to that, we have the 2 15-minute corridors within the system. And then one of those 4 routes that's not on 30-minute frequencies does provide service every 45 minutes. So we feel like we've really gained some ground in reducing the amount of time that people are having to wait for the bus. And as we know, the key to any successful transit system is frequency, and we feel like we've really gained some ground in those areas too, again, thanks to additional investment in the system. Also wanted to share an update about our night service. As you know, we had a pilot program that we launched just about a year ago today, bringing fixed route bus night service for routes 23 and routes 11, where we provide bus service until midnight on 1-hour frequencies between the hours of 7 and midnight. Those routes, as you recall, serve the north side of Oklahoma City on 23rd Street. We have an east-west crosstown along 23rd, and then Route 11 is a east-west crosstown at the southern portion of Oklahoma City along 29th and 15th. So this is a map of our current night service. You can see those routes both pulse at the transit center and at the west end of the city out at Greenfield Center Place on the hour, so transfers between the routes are available. And then in terms of our ridership, this next slide looks at the first 6 months of the pilot program, and this is the cumulative ridership for weeknights between the hours of 7 and midnight. And you can see that aside from May, where, as you'll recall, we had a lot of rain and wet evenings that we think impacted our ridership, we really saw steady growth month over month. I will point out that in January, the numbers are pretty low, but again, we implemented this service at the end of January, so that really only includes about 7 to maybe 10 days of ridership. We were very encouraged by our June numbers, where we ended up finishing the year with about 2,900 cumulative passenger trips on routes 23 in June, and then on Route 11, just over 1,400 cumulative passenger trips. So we're encouraged by the trend that we see in the ridership. Another way to look at the evening ridership is through riders per service hour. And the reason I included this graph this morning is because as we were developing the pilot program, one of the questions we wanted to answer was, well, how are we going to know if this program is successful? It's a very limited evening service. It's only 2 routes. As you're aware, we have not had a bus service at night in Oklahoma City for a considerable amount of time. And so what would be a good gauge of success? And so we determined that if we could average half of the riders per service hour during our evening service that we're able to accomplish during the day, then we thought that would be a pretty good indicator that we should look at expanding the pilot program. And you can see that in April and May, we came very close to achieving that goal and then actually exceeded that goal during the month of June at 9.83 riders per service hour. So we spent a lot of time talking about fixed route bus ridership, and rightfully so. As I mentioned, that's where the majority of passenger trips occur. In fact, over 3 million last year just through our fixed route ridership. But we do offer some other transit programs that I thought I might share with council and just again provide kind of a quick update as to some other services we provide. Through our senior adult transit programs in FY15, we provided almost 63,000 trips. And these programs are provided working in partnership with the area-wide agent agency, daily living centers, organizations like that. And what we do is we coordinate trips for seniors for non-emergency medical appointments. We coordinate trips to congregate meal sites, shopping trips for seniors, and so forth. And so you can see there's certainly a demand for those services. In addition to that, we do provide a paratransit service, and this service is a transportation service that is primarily for people with disabilities that are unable to use our regular fixed route bus service. An individual must qualify for this service, but once they've qualified, they can actually call us, schedule an appointment or a reservation. We'll pick them up at their place of origin and take them to their destination. And through our paratransit service, through FY15, we provided nearly 44,000 passenger trips. So I hope those slides give you a sense of kind of the activity in the transit system, what our ridership has been doing. And I wanted to shift the focus now and start talking about a little bit about some of the community relations and media engagement that we have accomplished over the past year. And the reason we feel this is so important is we want to continue to demonstrate to the community that we are a community partner. We want to take every advantage that we can to educate people about public transportation. And so through some of these community relations programs, we're able to accomplish that. So I have a few pictures on the slide this morning to talk about, and one would be the Hall Pass program. And I know that council is very familiar with the Hall Pass program. Last year, we successfully launched that program, a pilot program with Emerson High School. It was received very well, and then in September of 2015, the COTPA Board of Trustees expanded that Hall Pass program to include all middle school and high schools within the Oklahoma City Public School District. And so the way that program works is a high school or middle school student is able to purchase an unlimited bus pass for $10, which is about an 80% discount from the normal monthly pass price. And they can use that bus pass to get to and from school, of course, but they can use that bus pass anytime our service operates. So for extracurricular activities before and after school, maybe they need the bus to get to a part-time job or for a weekend activity. What it really does is, besides help students get to school, it really just opens up, gives them a transportation option so they can experience the community in which they live. And so we certainly appreciate the work with the Joint Education Task Force, along with the school district and the Oklahoma City Public Schools Foundation in working through expanding that program. Then there's a picture here at the bottom left of your screen. This is a photo taken from our annual free health fair that we hold every October. This last year we had about 400 participants, and those that attended the health fair could receive free flu vaccinations, different health screenings, some dental work, those kinds of things. And that's always a good program for us. And then in the bottom right, you see a photo of our bus at the Open Streets event from last spring on 23rd Street. And you can see by the line of people there waiting to get on the bus, it was a great opportunity for us to showcase our equipment and our services and introduce people to public transportation that maybe have never really stepped foot on a bus before. So it was a really encouraging event, and one that we plan to continue to participate in. We've also produced a series of educational videos. And when we talk about all the changes that we've made to our bus system, improved frequency, technology such as the real-time text alerts, the electronic journey planners, we want to make sure that we get the word out to our customer base and to the community that this is what we offer as a public transportation system now. And so one thing we've done is, again, we've produced a series of videos. You can see the topics up there. They range from how to ride to how to plan your trip, even how to conduct yourself while riding the bus. And we've made all of these videos available as content on Channel 20. We have these videos at our YouTube page, and so we can direct customers or people that just want to learn more about public transportation, we can direct them to these videos. And so they've really turned out nicely and are a huge benefit in trying to communicate our different services to our stakeholders. And then, of course, the media is always an area that we try to concentrate some of our public awareness efforts in. We usually try to partner with the media in any way that we can. And anytime that we have an opportunity to work with the media beyond just a traditional press release, we try to do that. And we had a couple of unique opportunities last year. The first one that I'll talk about is in the September 2015 So6 magazine. There was about a 14-page section in that magazine, and I think you were provided a copy of that this morning. There's about 14 pages there, a section called, or titled, EMBARK the City. And it was really interesting that they essentially did a fashion shoot using some of our equipment and our bus stops, and this was all shot as, you know, more or less part of our normal service. We didn't reserve a special bus for the event. And so I think if you have an opportunity to look at the pictures, I think you'll enjoy those. There's a couple of them on this slide that you can see on the left-hand side of the screen. And then also, Spokies was featured in the Electronic Velocity magazine, the most recent version of that magazine. And so we appreciate the Chamber thinking of Spokies and including that in that publication. And so, as we've looked at the slides that I've discussed so far, hopefully you at least have an idea of kind of the status of the transit system. Again, what we're accomplishing in terms of frequency improvements and ridership. And what I'd like to do now is just take a few minutes to share with you some recent projects or some projects that are currently underway. And the first one that I'm certainly excited to talk about is the expansion of the pilot program for night bus service. So on January 25th, a week from yesterday actually, we will add 2 new routes to our evening lineup. So we will be providing bus service on routes 5 and on routes 13N, again beginning on January 25th. And so as you can see by the map, the purple line is Route 5. It serves Classen Boulevard, Western, Pennsylvania, on up to Memorial, even out to Mercy Hospital. And then Route 13N serves the southern portion of Oklahoma City, serving Western down to 74th Street, and then as far west as OCCC. And then that southeast quadrant there is actually 104th and Santa Fe. So we're very excited about the opportunity to provide 2 additional routes for our evening lineup. And again, these buses will run on 1-hour frequencies, similar to 23, or the same as 23 and 11, and pulse at the transit center on the hour. So we've had a lot of interest about the expansion of the night service program, a lot of questions about when it's going to be here. And so we're looking forward to rolling that out, and we'll really follow a very similar public awareness and marketing campaign that we used with 23 and 11. And you can see some of the marketing materials here on the slide that we'll use. But some of the methods we'll use to create awareness about the routes is, one, we'll do some door hangers. And we've found these to be very successful when promoting 23 and 11. We actually will put out probably anywhere from 14 to maybe 16,000 door hangers in neighborhoods that are along the routes. You'll also see we have some posters designed. We'll be contacting businesses along the routes and multifamily residences and trying to display our posters, allowing people to know about the new night service. And then, of course, we'll do some radio, some digital advertising, and even take advantage of some bus bench advertising along the routes that are going to be having, or that we're adding the new night service to. Social media, of course, will be a big part of how we market or create awareness about our night service. On the slide here, you can see a couple of the Facebook posts from our initial launch of night service for 23 and 11. We will continue a similar process. What you'll expect to see if you follow us on Twitter, you'll expect to see a flurry of activity here as we launch the service. and then we'll slow down a little bit and go back into kind of our normal mode of social media advertising. And then as the weather gets warm and the days get longer, we will once again emphasize and publicize the new routes on 5 and 13. So we're looking forward to expanding that ridership or expanding those routes, to say the least. All right, the next slide we have here is a video. What we've done is we've produced a video that kind of captures some of the improvements that we've made to the bus system. And the reason we've produced this video is, one, the video itself is 60 seconds in length, and so we want to provide it as content on Channel 20, but then also we have the flexibility to break the video up into smaller segments, say 15-second segments that we can use with social media. And again, that's to promote our night service and just to promote our service in general. So I'd like to go ahead and share that video with you. It's about 60 seconds in length. See if we have it queued up and ready to go.
At EMBARK, we're not just stops on a map or collection of random people. We're a community connected.
It gets me from my place to my evening shift. I'm just now getting back on my feet, so it's really nice to have this option.
Since I usually don't get off till around 11, having this late night route is really a stress reliever for me.
Between my job and taking classes, this route just works easier for me. Sometimes I even get all my homework finished up. The free Wi-Fi helps too.
So I love it that I'm able to maintain my independence and get out and shop and do the things I love to do.
Our choices on where to live, work, learn, meet, and play grow with the connections we create. And with strong connections come economic opportunities and vibrant communities. Where public transit goes, community grows. Plan your journey at embarkok.com.
Okay, so hopefully you're able to recognize the subtleties there of the night service, the new bus stop that was featured, and of course, hopefully you heard the mention of the free Wi-Fi service. And that's the next project I wanted to make sure I updated council on, and that is the fact that we now have free Wi-Fi on all of our buses. Our entire fixed route bus fleet of 59 buses has Wi-Fi capabilities, and so regardless of what bus a customer might be on or what part of the city they might be traveling in, they have access to that amenity. And we've really seen some positive feedback on the free Wi-Fi. We know that folks are using it as we monitor some of the data usage. And again, we think it's just another one of those services that not only appeals to our current customer base, but we think will be a strong incentive for people that might be considering using public transportation to go ahead and give it a try. The next slide I have here is a map of the different bus stop upgrades that we currently have in process across the city. I shared a similar map with council during the budget presentation, but we looked primarily at new bus shelters only, when in fact, in addition to shelters, there are other bus stop upgrades that we are making across the city. So I will talk quickly about the shelters. We do have 45 shelters, 45 new shelters that we are constructing across the city. You can see those represented at the general vicinity of those shelters, represented by the blue dots on your map. We have 35 of those shelters completed and being used on a day-to-day basis. We expect the other 10 to be finished by the end of the fiscal year. In addition to the new shelters that you see on the map, we've began compiling our next list of shelters, and we have about 20 other locations identified where we plan to construct shelters and have those shelters completed again by the end of the fiscal year, probably no later than late summer. So when you think about the 45 we have in progress now, the additional 20 that we plan to construct, we're at about 65 new shelters system-wide. And keep in mind, when we started this project, adding new shelters, we had about a total of 75 in the system. So this is something we will continue to look at and plan for and expand on an annual basis. We also have about 11 locations represented by the red triangle on your map there, where we're creating or improving accessibility to existing stops. We were awarded a Transportation Alternatives Program grant through ACOG, and so what we're doing with those funds is we're identifying bus stops where curb cuts are needed or maybe an extension of the sidewalk, whatever we can do to make that bus stop more accessible. And then we've also been able to partner with the MAPS office, and in particular with the MAPS 3 Sidewalks Phase 3, we were able to identify 17 locations where new sidewalks are being constructed where there is also a bus stop. And so we've partnered with the MAPS office, and they have agreed as part of that project to construct a concrete pad in conjunction with the sidewalk as it's being constructed, and then that then allows us to be able to place a bench or a shelter at that location that's completely ADA accessible. And it is important to note that COTPA is actually funding the improvements for those concrete pads for the bus shelters, but we're working alongside MAPS as part of the overall project. And then we're also working with the Public Works Department. The Public Works Department has allowed us to weigh in and participate in some of the GEO bond projects as they're coming online, and we're able to identify different bus stop locations where there's some type of street improvement that is occurring. And again, the same idea is to be able to construct concrete pads or improve bus stop accessibility while those street projects are being implemented. On the map here, you'll see, particularly along 10th Street between Council and Portland, about 32 different locations where, again, we're working with Public Works to improve bus stops. Most of that work will be concrete pads for benches. There'll be several shelters installed along that street as well. So in all, we have about 106 locations that we're working on across the city in order to upgrade and improve our bus stops. Two other items I wanted to share with you this morning. One is I wanted to remind council about our Northwest Corridor Concept Plan. This was a plan that we worked on this summer. We had a couple of community meetings. And through COTPA's application to the US DOT, Oklahoma City was recognized as one of 5 cities that received from assistance from the DOT in what they are calling a public health corridor planning framework. And so really what that allowed us to do was be able to use kind of this planning framework and try to answer the question, you know, if you take a corridor, in this case the corridor we looked at was Classen Boulevard, north from downtown to Northwest Expressway, and then Northwest Expressway on out to about the Meridian area. We wanted to try to answer the question, on a corridor such as that has such high volumes of automobile traffic, is there a way to integrate enhanced transit, improve connectivity for pedestrians and cyclists, and a way to influence public health? And obviously anytime we can open up accessibility to hospitals, healthcare providers, pharmacies, grocery stores, those are all important public health components. And so we ended up doing this concept plan, and we're able to answer the question. There are some ways to integrate enhanced transit, namely BRT, along with some improved pedestrian connections along that corridor. And so we're able to share our results, our renderings in 2 different public meetings. All of the feedback we received from the meetings was very positive. We had about 60 in attendance at our first community meeting. That's the picture that you see on your slide this morning, and about maybe 25 to 30 at our second public meeting. So again, very positive comments. It is, of course, just a concept plan. It's kind of a starting point of maybe a bigger project. But again, very positive feedback from the community. And then this next slide is just a image of the actual corridor. And as you can see, we identified about 8 different stops along that corridor, and we purposefully picked some of the most challenging stops. For example, Northwest Expressway and 63rd, or Northwest Expressway and Blackwelder, Classen and 23rd. Real challenging stops to see, you know, can you incorporate transit into those locations? And so anyway, again, good feedback. It's a concept plan, but we do hope to make it part of a larger project in the future. And then the last item I had for you this morning is I wanted to be able to provide council with an update with regards to streetcar operations. Although the streetcar is scheduled to begin service still 2 years from now, it is time for us as the operator to begin considering and planning for operations. So what I have for you this morning is just a real high-level timeline to give you a sense of some of the things that we're already working on and things that we'll be working towards in order to prepare for a successful launch of the streetcar service. So as you can see currently, from now until mid-spring, we are working with a couple of different consultants to look at different options for delivering the maintenance and the operations of the streetcar. We are developing an RFP to advertise for a streetcar contract operator, and we'll be working with our consultants developing and refining operations plans as well during that time. And then late spring through the summer, we hope to complete our procurement process, have the RFP advertised, and hopefully be very close to selecting who that streetcar operator entity will be. And then through the fall and on into 2017, we will continue preparing for operations. We'll be working on things like further refinements to the operations plan. We will be working on our safety plans. We will make plans to occupy the maintenance facility and begin setting those operations up. And then in 2018, if the schedule holds for the streetcar delivery, and I do understand we're still in negotiations with the vehicle provider, but if the schedule holds, then we'll be preparing for delivery of the vehicles towards the end of 2017. And then as the main line track is finished, we'll be doing some testing, and again, all in preparation of launching the streetcar service in 2018. So again, I would expect some of these dates to change. There'll be some things that we add to this timeline, but again, wanted to provide council with just an update as to what we are working on currently to prepare for running the streetcar. And so with that, that concludes my presentation, but I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Questions? Just want to point out that I think we've, at council's insistence, we've added some services over the last several years, and I think we've got a better system than we had a couple of years ago. I don't think we're there yet. I think we've got a ways to go, but I think we should be pleased with the progress that we've made today.
Definitely, I think the numbers show it. Can you go back to like the second slide you showed that showed month by month ridership? And while you're getting there, let me just quickly ask you, your best estimate for the streetcar operations budget would be how much per year?
Right now, $3 million annually.
So between now and 2 years from now, we need to come up with $3 million annually. Okay? The number of buses that you currently have that are past their expected end of life is what percentage?
30% of our fleet is past its useful life. That's 18 buses.
Okay. Third, when you're trying to do more with less, and you're trying to give your transit system every advantage, signal prioritization, letting the buses go, anticipating letting them go through a green light, and so people can get to destinations faster, is that something we currently have the technological ability to do today, and is consideration being given to implementing that as a test or on certain routes?
Yes, that is something we are looking at. In fact, we've done some research internally. We've been working a bit with Public Works to better understand the traffic signal system that we have. And so, yes, we would like to pursue that and identify particularly certain corridors where we think signal prioritization, or at least the ability to hold a green light, green longer, would certainly be advantageous to certain routes, particularly at different times of the day. So that is something we are interested in looking at and have been actually researching for the last few months.
Okay, final question. So looking at this, there's tremendous variation by month, specifically, say, September versus December and January. I mean, that's just weather?
Yes, that's the bad weather factor. When the days get cold and the days get shorter, we see that. It's typical. We always see a decline in ridership during the colder winter months.
So normally in a city, frequency would be your biggest variation to increase ridership. Do you think it's possible that in Oklahoma City with so many bus benches and not very many, that might be an investment that could get tremendous increase in ridership? I mean, looking at these numbers.
Yeah, I mean, I think yeah, the ability to catch a bus at a shelter that's protected from the wind would certainly better than just a bench. So, to what percentage of our riders, consider that, I don't know, but yeah, you would think the more shelters we had out there, maybe it would encourage more people to use the service during the inclement weather.
How many stops do you have total on the system wide?
We're roughly 12 to 1,300 stops.
Okay.
The majority of those have benches, and then as you can see, I've shared the shelter numbers with you. So even though we've nearly doubled the amount of shelters we have in the system, we certainly still do have a ways to go, and we plan on addressing that.
So about 90% of our stops would be bus benches.
That is correct.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Yeah, David.
Just a couple of points. Jason, the midnight service along I-240 is really going to be helpful to all the merchants along I-240. Plus, it just provides accessibility to individuals that may not have a vehicle, or perhaps just one vehicle to the household. And so they're no longer having to rush to do all their shopping, say, by 7 o'clock. They now have as late as midnight to go shopping, as well as those students who attend Oklahoma City Community College. They can take classes that go all the way to 10:30 and still catch the bus. This route currently goes by 2 full-service grocery stores, along with a large number of variety retail stores along I-240, as well as numerous fast food and traditional restaurants. Plus, it goes by a hospital. So I think it creates, like you've said, just greater access to a lot of services, especially for people who may not have a traditional 8-to-5 job, or who has to do these types of errands at night. So thank you for that effort. One thing, and Councilman Shadid, kind of addresses your point about having to wait on a bus stop without any type of shelter. Can you explain just briefly the new enhancement that came out about a year ago that allows you to track the specific location of the bus that you're going to be boarding? Because like in my case, where I pick it up on 89th, close to Penn, I can stand inside a retail store if I so choose to, knowing that, and I can monitor exactly where that bus is located. And so those who like to try to get to the bus stop just as close to when the bus is going to arrive, that feature is so helpful, and anybody that has access to a cell phone can have that information. So can you explain that real quickly, Jason?
Sure, yeah. It's part of the new technology that we have available, and we have the the real-time bus locations, as you've mentioned, through our journey planner, and then we also have the real-time text alerts. And different people have different preferences on how they monitor the location of their bus. I know I myself have used the text feature, and it's very convenient. You simply put in your unique stop ID, your bus route, and then it's just a matter of, as you're waiting on the bus, hitting the R button for the refresh, and you just continually receive updates of when that bus is going to arrive at the stop that you're at. So yeah, both options are available, and again, that's what we're seeing nationally is, people nowadays are really more interested in just knowing when their bus is going to be there, more so than is the bus on schedule, because they put more emphasis on when it's actually going to be there.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And then a final point, as far as all the media coverage that you work with, historically, you all receive some of the highest awards at the National Transportation Association, and I'm sure this year will be no different. You constantly lead in those efforts to try to connect better with the public through the various media means, whether it's social media or television or radio, or in some cases, those things that you put on door handles. So thank you.
Thank you.
Just a comment, it's so heartening to see how the ridership has really followed the dollars. And you've done such a great job in expanding service with little dollars to do so, but you can really see what a great difference it's made. And I think we're on the way. That's, the whole plan, putting in place the new plan and the new routes was painful for some people, obviously, but I think we can see the results are so positive. I just look forward to the opportunity to do more.
Right. Thank you.
Mayor, I have a couple of things. One, I want to tell you how much I appreciate the expansion to OCCC. That is, so many of the students at OCCC don't have vehicles. That is just a really great opportunity for both the passengers and the college. I really appreciate that. The second thing I want to ask you about is the hall pass. You and I'm asking this publicly. You and I have had this discussion privately a lot of times, but I want to talk about it publicly. So many of the children that attend the public schools in Oklahoma City, both in the Putnam City system and the Oklahoma City system, $10 a month might as well be $1,000 a month. I just have not been able to come to an understanding of why we need to charge $10 a month for a child, for a high school student or junior high student to ride a bus when it will not place any additional burden on the system, it does not seem to me, and it would potentially provide us with future riders. The $10 a month, it seems to me, is a token amount which is beyond the capacity of most of the people that sorely need the transportation. Have you got any thoughts about a pilot program of some kind that would make it free for 6 months and see what the real impact of that is? And I've heard stories about, we can't have kids on the bus. When we asked the kids at Emerson about what the resistance was, it was not other kids on the bus, it was the people that are already riding the bus now that they were concerned about. I think it's fear of the unknown as opposed to a realistic fear that there's going to be somebody that'll do you harm one way or the other. I just don't see why we can't expand that hall pass thing to take care of all the kids that need it.
Well, my thoughts on the hall pass program are, we certainly want to encourage any student to use our bus service. We want students on our bus. We feel like we can do a very good job of getting any student to and from school, their extracurricular activities, and so forth. I also think any type of safety perception about the service is not correct. I mean, when we do our surveys, we always receive high marks in safety. I think our last one that I shared with you showed 75% of our customers that use our bus actually say it's a very safe service. So yeah, part of the challenge is working through programs like we did with Emerson, where we're able to introduce students to the service, they use the bus service, and they realize that, yeah, there's a lot of advantages here. So we want to do everything we can to encourage students to ride the bus, and I do agree. I think by getting young people involved using public transportation, it sets the stage for the future. And that's how one of the ways we're going to grow our system. As far as the pilot program for a free, totally free hall pass program, I mean, that's really something that I would discuss with the COPPA Board of Trustees. I can just say at this point that the decision by the trustees has been to charge the $10 per month. And again, I think there's different sides of that story. I think part of the reason that there was the desire to charge some type of fee for the pass is, for one, it was heavily discounted. I mean, it's 80% of the normal cost. But then again, I think there was some thought that we wanted to make sure that the students perceive there's some value to having the pass. So don't disagree that there's probably students, it doesn't matter how valuable they think it is, if they can't afford it, they can't get it. But then hopefully there are some students too that by having to buy the bus pass, even if it is $10, they realize that there is a value to this service, and even though it's costing me $10, I got to purchase my pass and keep up with it. So
you don't think somebody that has the ability to get on a bus that doesn't have the ability is not going to place some value on that, the opportunity to ride the bus?
Well, no, I didn't.
You think he has to pay for it when he doesn't have enough money? When he's on subsidized lunches, for example?
Yeah, I guess what I meant to say, and if I didn't communicate it clearly, is they would certainly see value in it, but if they can't afford to purchase it, then it does them no good.
Well, I understand that in theory, that if you don't have to pay money out of your pocket, you're not going to appreciate it. I didn't say I agreed with it in theory. I understand that that's some people believe that. But when the money that comes out of a child's pocket to pay for it would buy his lunch or buy his dinner that night, it seems to me to be just a misplaced philosophy. So anything you could do and to improve the opportunity for young people to ride the buses, I personally would appreciate very much. I also want to tell you how much I appreciate the fact that the increases that have been going on. This goes back to when Councilman Bowman was here, and we had flat budgets for a long, long time. And but gradually over that period of time, we have increased those budgets, and we've seen the fruit of that, and it's been very, very valuable, I think. The last thing is the comment you made about 90% of the people that embark or on the buses do it from a shelter. Is that right? Did I hear that right?
No, I think the point we were discussing was that approximately 90% of our bus stops do not have shelters.
Oh, okay. Well, do we have any, I know we can track where people get on, where they get off, all that stuff now.
Yes.
Can we track whether or not the addition of a shelter at a location increases use at that?
We could. I think it'd be a good exercise for us to do. Now, we use our boardings and alightings. We use that data to determine where we put shelters.
Right.
So, we're going to put shelters where we already have a lot of boardings and alightings.
Right.
But now that we've had some of these shelters in place for nearly a year, some of them that we started early, we could go back and look at that. I think that'd be an interesting exercise for us. We'd be glad to do that, see what the ridership or boardings and alightings are now versus before we had the shelter. Now, some of that's just going to be reflected in the growth of the system,
I understand.
but we could look at it.
Well, it's one of the things that's driven, at least my sentiment with regard to shelters, is that if we had shelters, that makes the ride more enjoyable, more easier, more comfortable, all those kind of things. And I
Absolutely.
would think, hopefully, that would manifest itself in more people using the facilities. And I just, it's not a lot of economic cost of finding out. I'd like for you to find out.
Yeah, we'll look at that for you. Be glad to.
I'm serious about this $10 thing. Every time I think about it and I go to these schools where those kids are being asked to pay $10 a month, it's easy to I mean, there are just so many of them that don't have the $10 and probably are the ones that need it the worst. And I just like to urge that to be looked at again, maybe a pilot program. Maybe a pilot program would dispel some of these concerns that there's going to be a riot of ungrateful children on the bus. I just don't think that'll happen. I think ridership will go up. I think we'll all be pleased with it. I'd like to see something like that happen.
Right, and we do want students on the bus.
I appreciate all you've done. You and your predecessor are largely responsible for the great leap that we've made in our transit system, and I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
James?
I guess I can articulate maybe the other side of the $10. As far as I can remember, fares pay for approximately 12% of the total cost, correct?
That's correct.
You also said that the $10 a month is an 80% reduction.
In the normal monthly,
in the normal
right.
monthly fee. So I think that is, from my perspective, that's an incredibly generous deal.
Yeah.
And so from my perspective, I think that the $10 a month is certainly appropriate. It's certainly generous. It's certainly something that would encourage kids to ride the bus.
I do need to clarify, we do have a student rate that's $25 per month, but so at 10, that's still less than half of what the normal student rate is. But yes, a discount.
Jason, is the presumption that the fare for the streetcar and the bus are going to be the same?
Not necessarily. We're looking at different options now for fares. I say looking at different options. We've talked about different ways to look at the fares so that basically you can pay a fare and ride both the bus system or the streetcar system. In other words, transfer between the modes. We've also looked at just a straight streetcar fare versus just a regular bus fare. So initially our thought is we would follow the same model as other cities, and at least initially the streetcar would perhaps be free as an introductory period, similar to how we did our bus fares when we made all the system enhancements. We had a short time where I believe the fare we had free service. But we have not nailed down exactly what the cost of the fare would be. We just want it to be we want the fare to be seamless between the two modes, and then have the option for bus only or streetcar only fares.
You think you could potentially make yourself vulnerable like other cities if you made streetcar fares free for a relatively more affluent population versus major, more impoverished populations pay for bus fare?
Well, I think as long as it's short term, and short term could be several months, it could be a year, we don't know what that is yet, then I think that reduces that risk considerably. I mean, again, other systems have done it, but it's something that we'll seriously consider as we move forward with a fair recommendation.
Quick question, Jason, can you provide to us at a later date the revenue breakdown and the ridership for the students, the $25 pass and also the $10 pass, the ridership and the revenue, please?
Yes, we can do that.
All right, thank you.
All right, anything else for Jason? Jason, thanks very much.
Thank you.